papers. Now, immigration check.
I'm a police lieutenant, Phoenix PD. My badge is in my truck.
Sure you are. Everyone's got a story. Show me documentation proving citizenship.
My name is Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, badge 2847. Call my precinct.
We'll verify that downtown.
Papers now, immigration check. The words cut through the morning heat, immediate and absolute. A Phoenix police lieutenant off duty stood at a gas pump, still in civilian clothes. He identified himself, his badge number, and pointed to his truck just meters away. Sure you are. Everyone's got a story. Show me documentation proving citizenship. These were not local officers. These were federal agents, immigration and customs enforcement, their body cameras already rolling. The lieutenant felt the sudden, chilling weight of an accusation he couldn't comprehend. He was Marcus Hayes, a 23-year veteran of the Phoenix PD. And at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday at a Shell station on McDowell Road, his life was about to become a national headline. It was the kind of desert heat that softens asphalt and turns steering wheels into branding irons. Lieutenant Marcus Hayes had just finished pumping gas after an overnight shift. 3 ICE agents approached his F-150 from an unmarked white SUV. Their tactical spacing and hand placement immediately signaled an aggressive posture. Agent Todd Brennan led, flanked by Agents Valdez and Kim. Hayes, a seasoned police officer, instantly cataloged their body language. They looked at him like prey. Brennan's voice was flat, bureaucratic, demanding identification and proof of legal status. Hayes calmly removed his sunglasses, ensuring his hands were visible. Years on the force taught him that sudden movements around armed officers could be deadly. He stated his name, rank and department, explaining his badge was in his truck. Brennan dismissed it. Everyone says there's something. The agent's tone made it clear he didn't believe a word. Hayes felt anger spark. He was being treated like a criminal in his own city, wearing his own team's jersey. What the officers didn't realize yet was the identity of the man they were profiling. Valdez and Kim tightened their triangle formation. Hayes understood containment tactics. He slowly reached for his wallet, 2 fingers, agonizingly deliberate. He produced his Arizona driver's license, his photo, his Glendale address, perfectly legal. Brennan barely glanced at it. This doesn't prove citizenship or legal status. I need a passport, birth certificate, naturalization papers. The words were a direct slap. Hayes had been born in Tucson. His father, born in Tucson. His grandfather, born in New Mexico when it was still a territory. His family had been American longer than Arizona had been a state. He repeated his birthright citizenship and his profession. Brennan pocketed the license, an act Hayes knew was technically theft. We're going to need you to come with us for processing and verification. Processing? Hayes' voice hardened. You're detaining me? On what grounds? What reasonable suspicion do you have that I'm here illegally besides the color of my skin? The question hung, stark and undeniable. Other customers at the gas station paused, phones emerging. Witnesses were materializing. Valdez claimed they were conducting an operation based on intelligence about illegal employment. At this moment, the story could still have ended quietly. Hayes called out their rationale directly. So you saw a black man at a gas station and decided to demand papers? That's your intelligence. That's your reasonable suspicion. Brennan's jaw tightened. Turn around. Hands behind your back. You're being detained. Hayes didn't move. He told them to call his precinct, Captain Williams, badge 2847. Brennan ignored him, reaching for handcuffs. Hayes made his decision. He would not make it easy. He planted his feet, hands visible, and used the commanding voice he'd developed over 2 decades. I am not resisting. I am not fleeing. I am invoking my Fourth Amendment rights. He continued. his voice crisp and clear for the cameras and witnesses. "You have no reasonable suspicion to detain me. You have no probable cause to arrest me. I am a Phoenix Police Department lieutenant, and if you put your hands on me without cause, you are committing assault on a peace officer." Brennan hesitated. This wasn't the usual compliance. This man was citing constitutional law, claiming to be a cop, creating a recorded scene. Hayes cut off Brennan's attempt to reassert authority. "What specific articulable facts made you target me? If the answer is, I'm brown and buying gas, that's not reasonable suspicion, that's racial profiling." Kim moved to grab Hayes' arm. Hayes stepped back, maintaining distance, hands still visible. "Don't touch me. I have not consented to any search or seizure. You are violating my constitutional rights, and it's being recorded." The standoff lasted only seconds, but time seemed to stretch. Then, Brennan gave the order. "Subject is resisting detention. Secure him." Valdez and Kim moved simultaneously, grabbing Hayes' arms as Brennan went for the cuffs. Hayes went limp, a dead weight, arms tense but not pulling. He continued speaking for the cameras as they manhandled him. "I'm not resisting. I am being assaulted by federal agents without reasonable suspicion or probable cause. My name is Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, Phoenix Police Department, badge number 2847. I am a United States citizen. This detention is unlawful." The cuffs clicked, tight enough to cut off circulation. Hayes' face, captured by Brennan's body camera, showed controlled fury. A 23-year police veteran was being treated like a criminal for pumping gas while black. They walked him to their SUV, past staring customers, past the woman still recording on her phone. "My truck," Hayes said, looking back at his F-150, keys in the ignition, service weapons secured in the console. "My vehicle is unsecured. I've got a weapon in there." Brennan offered no reassurance. This was the moment control slipped for everyone involved. They placed Hayes in the back of the SUV, the cage separating front from back. The space smelled of fear and sweat. Brennan made a call, his camera recording. He reported detaining a subject for verification, claiming no visible badge or ID. The call ended. They pulled out of the gas station, leaving Hayes' truck at the pump, and headed toward the ice field office. Hayes spoke directly to the cameras he knew were recording. He restated his identity, his citizenship, and the clear violation of his Fourth Amendment rights. He promised, "Everything these agents are doing is being recorded, and they will answer for it." The 28-minute ride was spent in silence, Hayes breathing slowly, controlling his anger, planning for what came next. The drive to the Icefield office took 28 minutes. Hayes spent it silent, his anger a cold, controlled presence. He ran through the likely next steps: processing, eventual verification, the inevitable realization of their error. The core question was how much damage they would inflict before admitting their mistake. They parked in the secured garage, the metal gate clanging shut behind them. Hayes was walked inside, still handcuffed, still treated like a common detainee. The intake area buzzed with activity. Other individuals in various stages of processing. Agents moved with the efficient, impersonal rhythm of bureaucracy. Hayes was placed in a holding room. It was a 10x10 concrete cube, stark and utilitarian, furnished only with a metal bench. Brennan removed the handcuffs, the clicking sound echoing in the small space. Hayes rubbed his wrists, red marks already forming on his skin. "Don't suppose you want to make that phone call to my precinct now?" Hayes asked, his voice even. Brennan's reply was dismissive. "We'll verify your identity through proper channels." This was bureaucrat speak for intentional delay, a deliberate attempt to cover their error before admitting it. The door closed, sealing Hayes in the cold, silent room. What they refused to do next would escalate a mistake into a systemic failure. He sat on the metal bench. A police lieutenant with 2 decades of service, now treated like an undocumented immigrant. He had been in rooms like this countless times, always on the other side, interviewing suspects. He never imagined being the one on this bench. An hour passed, then 2. Hayes could hear the muffled sounds of the office outside. Agents talking, phones ringing, the distant hum of the enforcement machinery. Nobody came for him. Nobody explained anything. Just silence, waiting, and the slow, growing certainty that a catastrophic mistake was about to be officially recognized. The silence in that room was a deliberate act of power. The internal clock was ticking towards an unavoidable confrontation. The longer they delayed, the deeper they dug their own institutional grave. This was not just about Marcus Hayes. It was about the chilling power of procedure used as a shield against accountability. At 12:43 p.m., more than 3 hours after the gas station stop, the door finally opened. A supervisor entered, his rank insignia visible, followed by Brennan, who looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Mr. Hayes," the supervisor began, his voice carefully neutral. "I'm Agent Supervisor Martinez. There's been a situation. We verified your identity." Hayes's voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "You mean you finally called Phoenix PD and found out I am exactly who I said I was?" Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, 23 years on the force, born in Tucson, natural-born citizen. "And you detained me for 3 hours because I was pumping gas." Martinez had the decency to look uncomfortable. He recited the official line. "We followed procedure for verification of status. You're free to go. We'll arrange transport back to your vehicle." Hayes cut him off. "Procedure? Your procedure is to detain American citizens without reasonable suspicion, to ignore when someone tells you they're a cop, to leave their vehicle unsecured at a gas station for 3 hours?" But the truth, once verified, demanded a reckoning. Silence filled the small room. There was nothing Martinez could say that wouldn't make the situation worse. Hayes continued, making his demands clear. "I want copies of all body camera footage. I want the names and badge numbers of all 3 agents involved. I want a formal incident report. And I want to know what reasonable suspicion you had to stop me in the first place, beyond being brown at a gas station." Martinez, reverting to bureaucratic language, offered the minimum. "You'll receive all appropriate documentation. Again, we apologize for any inconvenience." Hayes spoke softly, but his words carried the weight of conviction. "Inconvenience? You handcuffed a police lieutenant and detained him for 3 hours without cause. And you're calling it an inconvenience? We're way past inconvenience. We're into federal civil rights violation territory, and you know it." They drove him back to the Shell station in uncomfortable silence. Hayes' truck was still there, remarkably untowed, still parked at the pump. He checked his console. Badge and weapon secured, nothing disturbed. Hayes stood for a moment in the parking lot, breathing the hot air, processing the insult. Then he got in his truck, drove directly to Phoenix Police Headquarters, and walked into Captain Williams' office, still in his basketball shorts and sun shirt. "Marcus, what the hell?" Williams started, then saw Hayes' expression. "What happened?" Hayes told him every detail. The stop, the detention, the 3 hours in the federal holding cell. Williams listened, his face shifting from concern to fury. "They detained you for what? For being brown. That's it. That's the whole reason. No reasonable suspicion, no probable cause. Just 3 ICE agents who saw a black man and decided to demand papers. This wasn't just an incident. It was a gauntlet thrown." Williams reached for his phone. "I'm calling the chief, and you're calling a lawyer. This is beyond department business. This is federal civil rights lawsuit territory." The lawyer Marcus Hayes hired was Amanda Torres, a civil rights attorney with a reputation for taking on federal agencies. She listened to his story, taking precise notes. Within weeks, she initiated a FOIA request, demanding all body camera footage from the incident. The recordings arrived. They were damning. 3 distinct angles captured Hayes being stopped without cause, detained without suspicion. He was handcuffed and transported despite clearly identifying himself. The audio documented his repeated assertions of citizenship, his badge number, and his insistent request that they verify with his department. All of it was ignored until after he had been processed. What the agents recorded that day would soon become their undoing. Within 8 weeks, Torres had everything she needed. She filed a lawsuit that made the Department of Homeland Security's legal team blanch. The complaint, titled Lieutenant Marcus Hayes versus United States of America, Todd Brennan, Luis Valdez, Jennifer Kim, was extensive. It alleged unlawful detention, false imprisonment, and a clear violation of Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable seizure. Further charges included racial profiling, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Hundreds of pages of exhibits supported the claims. The body camera recordings, witness statements from the gas station, Hayes' phone records, his impeccable service record with Phoenix PD, his birth certificate proving citizenship. It was an airtight case of wrongful detention built on undeniable evidence. The government moved quickly, offering to settle within 4 months. The initial offer was $75,000. Torres's response was a single defiant word: no. They returned with $300,000. It was still insulting. This was not just about money. It was about accountability. Your agents detained a police lieutenant for 3 hours because he was brown, Torres told the government attorney. You ignored his identification, his badge number, his constitutional rights. We are going to trial, and a jury is going to make you pay for every second of that detention. The trial began 19 months after the gas station stop. The courtroom in downtown Phoenix was packed every day. Off-duty cops wore their uniforms in solidarity. Civil rights organizations and community members filled the galleries. Media from across the country covered what had become a symbol of federal overreach and racial profiling. On day 2, the body camera footage was played. All 3 angles, synchronized, filled the courtroom screens. The jury watched Hayes being approached, questioned, then detained. They listened as he clearly and repeatedly identified himself. They witnessed 3 federal agents ignore everything he said and handcuff him anyway. The silence after the footage ended was deafening, charged with disbelief. When the footage finished, the emotional impact on the jury was clear. Several jurors looked visibly angry. One woman slowly shook her head, her expression a mix of disgust and disbelief. The visual evidence was undeniable. Hayes testified for 9 hours across 4 days. He walked the jury through his 23-year career, detailing his service record and commendations. He described the profound humiliation of being detained at a gas station he had frequented hundreds of times in his own city, wearing his own team's jersey. He explained the fear that had coursed through his mind. Would they believe him? Would this escalate? Would he become another name, another hashtag? I've been a cop for 23 years, he told the jury. I've made thousands of stops, hundreds of arrests. I know what reasonable suspicion looks like. I know what probable cause requires. Those agents had neither. They had a brown man at a gas station, and that was enough for them. Everything else, my explanation, my badge number, my rights, none of it mattered because they'd already decided I didn't belong. The defense's argument, fragile from the start, was about to shatter. The defense team tried to argue that the agents had acted reasonably based on general intelligence about illegal employment in the area. Torres dismantled this argument during her cross-examination of Agent Brennan. Agent Brennan, what specific intelligence did you have about illegal employment at that Shell station? Torres pressed. Brennan fumbled. We had general intelligence about the area. Torres pounced. The area. So, not that specific station, correct? Brennan conceded. Correct. And what about Lieutenant Hayes' behavior or appearance? Torres continued. Made you suspect illegal employment? Brennan's evasion was immediate. He matched the general demographic profile. Torres leaned in. Demographic profile? You mean he was brown? Brennan struggled. That's not what I said. But it's what you meant. Torres finished. Her voice unwavering. Because nothing else about him, his clothing, his vehicle, his behavior, suggested illegal employment. He was pumping gas. So, what exactly made you target him? Silence. The courtroom held its breath as Brennan struggled, searching for an answer that would not sound like overt racial profiling. He found none. The jury watched his discomfort, understanding the implication. The jury deliberated for 8 days. The weight of the evidence, particularly the synchronized body camera footage and Agent Brennan's stammering cross-examination, was palpable. Every moment in that deliberation room represented the scrutiny of federal power. When they returned to the courtroom, the foreman's voice was clear. The verdict electrified the room. Guilty on all counts. The Department of Homeland Security, through its agents, had been found liable for unlawful detention, false imprisonment, Fourth Amendment violations, racial profiling, deprivation of civil rights, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. This was not just a verdict, it was a powerful repudiation. The damages phase of the trial took another 12 days. This stage shifted the focus from the act itself to its devastating impact on Marcus Hayes. The jury heard about his nightmares, the hypervigilance that now permeated his daily life, his profound inability to trust federal law enforcement. Captain Williams testified, describing how the incident had affected Hayes' work performance and his relationships with fellow officers. A psychologist provided expert testimony, detailing the symptoms of PTSD specifically in law enforcement officers who become victims of the very system they serve. The humiliation, the fear, the betrayal of trust, all were laid bare. When the jury announced the damages, the courtroom fell silent. The numbers were staggering. $9.4 million in compensatory damages, intended to directly compensate Hayes for his suffering, and an additional $4.5 million in punitive damages, designed to punish the agents and deter similar future misconduct. The total judgment was $13.9 million. The financial penalty was immense, but the systemic response was minimal. Agent Brennan, Agent Valdez, and Agent Kim were reassigned. Not fired, not stripped of their authority, but moved to desk positions, effectively sidelined from field operations. The field office supervisor, Agent Supervisor Martinez, who had delayed verification, faced a demotion. These internal consequences, while significant for the individuals, felt small in comparison to the scale of the verdict. The Department of Homeland Security issued carefully worded public statements. They spoke of ongoing reviews and policy clarifications. They updated training materials describing these changes as regularly scheduled revisions. Crucially, they avoided any admission that systemic problems existed. There was no acknowledgement that this specific case had revealed fundamental failures in their operational procedures or cultural biases. It was a bureaucratic sidestep, designed to minimize fallout without addressing the root cause. Hayes remained with the Phoenix Police Department for another 3 years. He retired early, the incident having profoundly changed his perspective on law enforcement, even his own. The trauma lingered, a shadow over his career. But Marcus Hayes refused to let his experience be in vain. He used a significant portion of his settlement to fund a legal defense organization. Its mission was specific: to provide free attorneys and documentation assistance to individuals detained by immigration enforcement. It was a direct countermeasure, a way to empower those who lacked the resources and influence he possessed. The gas station stop, once a mundane moment in a Tuesday morning, transformed into a cautionary tale. It is now taught in police academies and law schools across the country. It serves as a stark example of how dangerous assumptions can override clear evidence. It demonstrates how unchecked profiling can destroy lives, and how even the authority of a badge offers no protection when personal bias dictates you don't belong. The question remained: how many others had been caught in this unforgiving system without a badge, without a witness, without a name? The story of Lieutenant Marcus Hayes, once a quiet professional on an overnight shift, became a national lesson. His gas station stop was no longer an isolated incident, but a stark illustration of systemic vulnerabilities. The verdict of $13.9 million resonated far beyond a single courtroom, exposing the tangible cost of unchecked power and institutional bias. The reassignment of agents Brennan, Valdez, and Kim, and the demotion of Supervisor Martinez were internal actions. They signaled a consequence but not a confession of systemic failure. The Department of Homeland Security's carefully worded statements and regularly scheduled revisions to training materials were an exercise in damage control, a deliberate avoidance of deeper self-reflection. But the real question lingered: had anything truly changed within the system itself? Hayes' early retirement from the Phoenix PD was a quiet testament to the enduring toll of the incident. A 23-year career, defined by service and protection, ended with a personal understanding of victimhood. His decision to fund a legal defense organization was a direct act of defiance, channeling his personal trauma into systemic advocacy. It recognized that his badge, his rank, his standing in the community had allowed him to fight back, a privilege many others facing similar profiling did not possess. The cautionary tale taught in police academies and law schools speaks of assumptions overriding evidence, of profiling destroying lives. It highlights the brutal truth that even a police badge offers no protection when bias decides you simply don't belong. This narrative is crucial, yet it only scratches the surface of the core systemic issue. How many people, without cameras, without a powerful legal team, disappear into the cracks of this system? The events at the Shell station on McDowell Road exposed a legal framework designed to protect borders, twisted to become an instrument of arbitrary suspicion. The legal threshold for stopping individuals based on reasonable suspicion is meant to be a safeguard, demanding specific, articulable facts. Yet for Hayes, that threshold was apparently lowered to a brown man at a gas station. This fundamental misapplication of law opens a dangerous door. The notion that citizenship, a birthright for millions, could be instantly challenged and demanded by federal agents without clear cause is deeply unsettling. It implies a hierarchical citizenship, where some must continually reprove their belonging, while others move freely, unquestioned. This creates a two-tiered system of rights, corrosive to the very fabric of equality. The system in this instance failed at its most basic duty, to protect its own citizens. Hayes' victory was a rare moment of triumph for individual rights against the vast machinery of the state. But for every Marcus Hayes who has the means and the standing to fight, there are countless others who do not. The woman recording on her phone at the gas station, the man who heard Hayes claim to be a cop. They were witnesses to an injustice that could easily have gone unrecorded, unreported, and unpunished. This case forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about implicit bias, about the interpretation of intelligence that defaults to racial profiling, and about accountability within federal agencies. It asks whether the procedural safeguards in place are sufficient or if they merely provide an illusion of fairness. If you believe citizenship shouldn't require proving yourself at gas stations, if you believe reasonable suspicion means something concrete, if you understand why documentation matters and why cameras save lives, then the fight for systemic change is far from over. Because in a country where a decorated police lieutenant can be detained for being brown while buying gas, all of us are one stop away from having to prove we belong in our own home.